Hello everybody, welcome to our second round of HAPS interviews for HAPS 2020. It's very exciting. I had a great time last week. We had 3 fantastic students. If you have not watched those interviews, I recommend you go back and take a look because they were really interesting and some very engaging speakers. Just a brief bit of information, some background for those of you who don't know what HAPS is. HAPS stands for Humans Against Poor Scholarship, and it is a crowdfunded student scholarship program that we set up last year to help PhD students fill the financial gap between the spring and autumn semesters. Very often, especially in the humanities, funding is scarce. You don't get paid normally over the summer months, which means students either have to take out loans or get work or apply for external funding like this grant. The problem with taking out loans is obviously then you have a loan to pay off. The problem with taking on additional paid employment is that it takes you away from actually the work of your PhD, which means that then that already long process takes even longer. So we wanted to try and provide some additional funding so students finish up in a timely manner and don't have to put themselves into debt doing so. To that end, we offer at the moment 3 scholarships of $2,000 each. They're very open-ended. These are intended for students to use for travel money or to register for technical training or go to conferences, or even just to stay home and write their dissertation research, because that does need doing. It's quite important, and you do still need to do things like pay rent and buy food while you do it. So yes, very open-ended grant program. If you're a PhD student and you need money for the summer, and this is the key, you work in the ancient Near East or some aspect thereof, we are here for you. We have Dr. Josh in the side chat if you're watching live. If you have questions for any of our applicants today, please put them in the side chat and tag Josh at Digital Hammurabi to make sure he sees them. We will get through as many of your questions as we have time for. These are relatively brief interviews. We only go half an hour each because I think making people talk to the whole of YouTube for more than that is a little bit cruel. And once we finished all of the interviews, we did 3 this week, last week, 3 this week. We have another 6 scheduled, and then a couple more applications are still coming in. We extended the deadline a little bit because of the coronavirus. So I think the deadline is next Friday. By then we'll know how many people we have to interview, when the interviews are. By and large, I try and interview at this time on Saturdays because it's more convenient, mainly for us. The baby's in bed, so we don't have to contend with the toddler running around and making a lot of noise. Having said that, all of our live streams are listed on the calendar that you can find on our website, which is digitalhammurabi.com/calendar. All of the interviews should be up there. You can check back and see how many we have, when they're scheduled for, and join us to ask your own questions, because that is one of the major points of what we're doing, as well as providing money for students to complete their research. We want to provide a kind of outlet and experience for the students to talk to non-specialists about what it is they do. One of the problems that we've noticed, that many people have noticed, is that academics don't really know how to talk to non-academics about their research. It's not something you get a lot of training in. So we want to try and help bridge that gap and bring good scholarship by good PhD students to an interested non-specialist audience, which is you guys, which is hopefully why you're here. So we have 3 fantastic candidates lined up today. First up is Bruno Soltik, who is, I'm just checking my notes here to make sure I get the right people with the right institutions, who is a student at Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary. We have Mari Yamazaki from Johannes Gutenberg Universität Mainz, and French Xavier, who's from the Universitat Autónoma de Barcelona. So, very diverse group today. Hopefully it will be as interesting as last time. I'm sure it will be. And at the moment I'm just killing time because we have a few minutes before Bruno is due to come on. So if you have questions for me right now about HAPS, how it works, pop them in the side chat. We have 5 minutes that I can use to answer any questions. If you are interested in donating to HAPS, I understand that now is a really bad time for pretty much everyone, and many people are out of work, and that there is not a lot of spare money floating around for things like funding scholarship programs. If you do have a couple of dollars spare and you would like to help, send us a contribution. We take PayPal. Our PayPal is digitalhammurabi@gmail.com, and there's a link floating across the bottom of your screen. We also have a Patreon. If you are able to give on a more regular basis, you can join our Patreon, which is patreon.com/HAPS fund. Both kinds of donations are equally welcome. All of the money goes towards funding scholarship programs. We don't take, I don't get paid for this. It's something that I do because I think it's important. So previously, all of the money has gone to the scholarships. Going forward, we will be doing things like taking web hosting money out, because we do or will very soon have a dedicated HAPS website that we'll need paying for. I'm also going to have to start paying an accountant. But generally speaking, those costs should be very minimal, and your money will be going to a very, very good cause. And I forgot the most exciting part of HAPS. I can't believe I did that. I can't believe Josh let me forget it.
My bad.
He's like, I don't know what I did. Please don't drag me into this. Everyone who donates to HAPS gets to vote on what research they would most like to see funded.
Don't forget to tell them that they get to vote.
I don't know if you heard that because his mic is muted, but he said don't forget to tell them that they get to vote. So everybody who donates to HAPS gets a say in what research we fund. So after all of the interviews have been processed, after everyone has had a chance to read the application materials, to listen to the interviews, to ask any questions they have, we will send out voting instructions. All donors from the 2019-2020 calendar year, or academic year, I guess, get to vote for what 3 students they would like to see funded. Because it's your money, we feel that you should have a say in where it goes. And I feel like giving donors a stake in the research that is being carried out is very, very important, because it's research is important stuff, and getting people engaged in it is very difficult, because a lot of the time it's these very, not esoteric, but questions that can be hard to get behind or to relate to if you're not involved in the research yourself. So this is just our way of trying to involve people, to make them feel included, and to make the research relatable, and just to kind of bring those two worlds together in a more concrete way than has maybe happened before. So donate, vote, and then in September we will have the 3 successful students back on the show to talk about what research they carried out and how their projects went, and if they managed to do field work. We have a lot of archaeology students looking for funding, and it's a little bit up in the air as to whether they'll actually be able to go and excavate this summer. So all archaeology students are being asked, what are your alternate plans in case you're not allowed to travel? So after the summer is completed, we'll have them all back. They can tell us how they got on, and you guys get to ask any questions that you have still. So exciting times. And without further ado, I am going to bring Bruno in. Oh dear, there we go. 1 second. Sorry, everyone. There we are. Bruno, hello. There we go. I unmuted you. Can you say something for me? Yes, we can. I'm just going to I can't turn you up. There we go. I think everyone should be able to hear you. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So to begin with, would you mind just giving us a bit of background information about yourself and maybe how you got into the field?
Well, when I was 13 years old, I attended archaeological lectures with my father and I kind of got hooked on it. There was a guy who excavated in Israel and with Zertal, and they were excavating Mount Ebal, and they found all the sacrificial leftovers from Joshua. Mm-hmm. And so kind of get me hooked on it.
That's really cool. It's interesting that you're able to get into it at such a relatively young age. That's fantastic. Thank you. What is your personal area of specialization?
My personal area of specialization is Iron Age religion, archaeology of religion. So basically what I'm doing, I'm just looking specifically on the religious artifacts and how that kind of portrays in the religion of the ancient Near East.
Fantastic. And you're working in the Levantine coast at the moment?
Yes. I work at the moment I'm working in Tel Burna. It's right behind me. I'm not there, but thanks to Zoom, they have a wonderful, wonderful background. It's much better than my living room. Anyway, I'm working at Tel Burna at the moment, but we just finished 10 years of excavating at Tel Gezer, also in Israel.
Oh wow! Okay, that's a lot of excavation.
Yes.
So, if you do get funded by HAPS, what are your current research plans for the summer?
Well, I'm at my last stage of my dissertation writing, so
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thanks to Corona, I managed to finish a chapter a few months earlier. So I have, I think, a chapter and a half left. So I have that, and then I have hopefully go to Burna. If that doesn't go through, I'm probably going to go to Tel Keisan, which is in northern Israel. And that excavation start in September. So hopefully that will kind of work. If that doesn't work out, I have I'm presenting 2 papers at ASOR in Boston this fall, and one is on a week on a dig. Basically, I'm going to talk to the archaeologists and what their role is, and it's going to be a video project. And then the other one is it's Gods and Scholars, and it's basically video games and how the religion is portrayed, particularly in Assassin's Creed Odysseys and in the new game Gods and Monsters, but it's not released yet. That
sounds like a very fascinating collection of research projects.
Yes.
So if you do manage to go back to Tel Burna, is there a particular area you're excavating at the moment? Or is it just kind of whatever you're thrown into?
No. There's the field that I'm at, it's field G, which stands for gate. So usually at the gate, that's where we have the religious structures in Iron Age 1. And so that's where the gate I'm going to be excavating. And if we do manage to get out there and we do find something significant, it's probably going to go into my dissertation as a pre-published work.
That's fantastic. So when you're looking at religion, specifically from an archaeological standpoint, what kinds of things do you look for? How do you try and interpret the objects that you find to get at the religious significance they may have?
Well, it's a cluster of objects together, and also the location, what we have. So for instance, we have something in Israel that's called masebot, which is basically the standing stones. Whenever we find like a standing stone separately, it's usually bigger, like massive piece of stone, usually carved. I mean, it's standing in a specific location in the room, and there's some like cultic artifacts like figurines or animal zoomorphic figurines, or there's some kind of sacrificial animals, bones around it that can be kind of identified as a cultic object. And also that room would then become cultic room as well.
That's fantastic. So do you purely consider the archaeology, or do you look also at any textual evidence you have to try and help you interpret?
Well, my bachelor's was from University of Zagreb in theology, and then I went to school in Texas. I did my master's in Hebrew Bible, and so my PhD is solely on archaeology. So I do have textual references, but the problem with the scholarship, especially the religious scholarship of ancient Israel, is that majority of the scholarship is focused on the textual resources. So if you look at that, it doesn't really give you a realistic picture, because everyone talks about the Temple of Jerusalem, but we have absolutely zero evidence of the first temple in Jerusalem, the Solomonic Temple. Even the pomegranate, that it was a falsified object as well. So I think looking into archaeology gives you a more realistic picture how the religion looked like. So
that's a very interesting, kind of refreshing perspective, actually, because I'm a text person. It's what I do. Yes. I have some archaeological training, but not an awful lot. So it's my personal tendency to do what the scholars you're talking about have done and come at it from a purely text standpoint. But it's always important and interesting to find kind of the other half of the evidence that you should be looking at, and but not try and, like maybe what I said earlier, use the text to explain the archaeology, but see how they work together to kind of create a coherent whole. Thank you.
Yeah, most definitely. The first chapter of my dissertation talks about all this research that was like 1800s on, and until 2000s, we really don't have any archaeological books on the religion of Israel now. So definitely, there's definitely going to be a shift, and things are going to be more harmonious together.
So you said that you've been excavating. I can't remember if you said Tel Burna for 10 years.
No, Tel Gezer was at 10 years, but Tel Burna was, we joined, my school, we joined the Tel Burna for the last 3 years, I believe. I
see. Okay. So you have very extensive experience in the area and in the archaeology of the region. Yes.
I mean, I wasn't 10 years at the excavations at Gezer, but I did join halfway through for sure.
That's amazing.
And I also do have a short excavation in Kazakhstan.
Oh, really?
Yes. Yeah, we had one season. Well, I was there for one season. We were looking for some Nestorian Christians.
What's your favorite part of excavating?
My favorite part of the excavating, probably the morning dig. Like once you hike up the hill and you see the sunrise there, and then you kind of start feeling the freshness of the dirt.
Yeah,
that's probably the best part. And also when you find something very cool.
I did a season of field survey in Turkey, and we were looking for primarily ivory workshops. So there was a lot of bent over double looking for tiny potsherds and little ivory fragments. And when you actually found something that was recognizable as a human-made artifact, it was always very exciting.
Yeah, survey work is a little bit different. It's not as exciting as really moving rocks and hauling dirt.
But yes, no, I believe that.
Yeah.
So we've talked about your summer plans and your alternate plans. Can we talk a bit about your videos, because you've we've got a sample. So I'll play that now, and then we can talk about what you're doing with that.
We gather all the dirt, rubble, and rocks into a wheelbarrow and dump it off the tell. Breakfast starts at about 9 a.m. It's usually a wide variety of kosher sandwiches with choices of cheese, eggs, tuna, and vegetables. Breakfast is not as social since everyone is enjoying their first meal of the day. At 9:30, the excavations continue. While excavating, archaeologists use many different tools. A pick is used for faster digging, usually of bulks and not so important areas. Brushes are usually used when we're done with removing the dirt and preparing the square for pictures. Trowels and dustpans are used to remove smaller amounts of dirt, and hand picks, or patishim, are used to dig in smaller areas, while turiyas are used to remove large amounts of dirt.
So,
yes.
It's a little weird. I can't hear what the video is playing through YouTube, and you can't hear it either. So there was just us sitting in silence for a minute and a half.
It's okay.
But it went through fine with everyone else, which is the important thing.
Excellent.
So do you want to maybe explain a bit about why you made that video and what your plans are for the next one?
I presented this video at the last 2 years ago at ASOR at Digital Humanities session, and it was very warm received because it kind of shows what archaeologists actually do. It's not Indiana Jones or Ancient Aliens. It's actually archaeological work. So what I'm trying to do with the next one is talk more about the dig director and interview him, like what's his role is, or then we have the ceramics person, what his role is, the metal object person, or the animal bone person, or the human bone. So it's just going to have different interviews with different people to kind of bring the archaeology to a wider public and to be more aware of what archaeology actually is, and that it's actually exciting. It is actually exciting. So,
I think that's incredibly valuable, and I haven't put a link yet, but there will be a link to the full video on the description of this interview. So if you are interested in what a day on an archaeological dig site looks like, I highly recommend you go and have a look at that, because it's not what you think.
Yeah, and just on the video, people told me we don't eat that much, but there's a lot of food though.
I feel like eating is like the highlight of the dig, because everyone gets to sit down for a few minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. The book that Eric Klein just published, the Digging at Armageddon, he just described how they just had tea all day long because it was a British dig.
Yeah, I can see that happening. No, eating is a very important part of archaeology. You'd all fall over otherwise.
Absolutely.
So where like I said, you've published this video already on YouTube. Do you have other means to publicize it, or are you restricted at the moment just to the YouTube platform?
I mean, a lot of, because YouTube is free, so everyone can use it. And I know a couple of scholars are using those videos in their classes.
Oh, fantastic.
So I don't think I need to monetize this. This is, I do it out of passion. And it's I really enjoy it. So as long as I publish and it's on my resume that I did something valuable and people can use it, I think I'm content with YouTube.
No, it's very admirable. And it's nice to have something that isn't Ancient Aliens to point people to.
I know.
And say, look, this is what archaeology is.
Exactly. We eat a lot of food.
We eat food and we move dirt.
Exactly.
So I try and, when I'm talking to people, try and explain, like talking to non-specialists, exactly, sorry, headphones are falling off. Try and explain exactly how careful and methodical an archaeological excavation is, and kind of why a dig can take 10 years in one site, not uncover everything, but why you can be there for such a long time and be so productive. Can you talk for just a couple of minutes on maybe the day-to-day process of what you go through on the dig?
Oh, absolutely. So basically what happens is we only excavate maybe 10%. I think they said that only 10% of the sites in Israel have been excavated. And they have a lot of sites, and they've been excavated since the early 1900s. So the Megiddo dig, which is one of the biggest one, and the Armageddon was the biggest excavated site that we have, and I think they only did 30%, and they had over $1 million endowment in the 1930s from the Rockefeller Foundation, which is a lot of money back then. So basically, what we have to document everything, because archaeology is a very destructive discipline. So we absolutely destroy what we dig, but we do have to record what we found. So that way it takes a longer time. So, for instance, we are excavating at a square. We use the canyon method, which is a 4 by 4 meters square, and then a 1 meter bulk, and then another 4 by 4 meter square. So that way we see this stratigraphy of what we did. So let's say we excavate one square and we go down. We have the Hellenistic period. We found the Alexander the Great coin, so it's the Hellenistic period. And then we go lower, it's Persian period. We found some torpedo pots, and that's a Persian. And then we go lower, and it's a Judean period, Iron Age 2, Iron Age 3 actually. So, and they're gonna go down, but we those have different layers and they're different phases of different structures. For instance, there's a temple in Kirbet Kiafa that had 13 layers. So the 13 different layers of soil. So it on just one period of time. So it really have to be methodical and very careful, because everything you find, you actually destroy.
That's why the recording is so important, and that's why I've mentioned, I think we talked briefly about this in an interview last week, but it takes so long to publish excavation results because you come up with so much material that you actually have to sit down and synthesize it and write it all out.
Oh, absolutely. So my professor, we have a laboratory in Jerusalem, and it's basically in a bunker basement of a university, and it's just full of pottery. So you have to put all that pots together, like put them together, and then we can basically publish on those pots, and then we can determine what levels we found. It takes a lot of work, and most publications, like, don't get published. Most of them don't get published because archaeologists either die, they lose funding, or something unfortunate happens, and they get published years later when some student is desperate for an idea for a PhD project.
I was going to say, it's why PhDs like yours are so valuable, because you're going through this archaeology and publishing it so other people can have access to it.
Exactly.
Well, we are at the halfway mark, so I think we're going to bring in Josh and see if he has any questions for you.
I do. How you doing, Bruno?
I'm doing very good. How are you?
I'm doing okay. I have to ask you just right off the bat, are you excited about Ted Lewis's new book being published in June on Israelite religion?
No, I'm not even familiar with it.
Oh,
it's coming.
Yeah, it's his magnum opus. He was
a
professor up at Hopkins, so it's over 1,000 pages.
Oh, wow.
It's my it's my slick way of
Is he a text guy?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's interesting to hear Megan say, I'll get to the questions in a second, sorry, but it's interesting to hear Megan say that she has so little archaeological experience. She has 3 years under Glenn Schwartz up at Hopkins, but
wow!
I didn't actually excavate.
Glenn Schwartz is amazing.
Yeah. He is amazing. Classes with him are fantastic and terrifying.
I was very fortunate to excavate with him out in Syria.
Oh, very nice. Did you excavate with Tiffany?
No, it was Mara.
No.
With Tiffany. Yeah, with Tiffany Early Spadoni. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, she was. It was. I don't know that I actually excavated with. She was up at. I was in classes with her, but I didn't.
Okay.
I don't think I was. She was up to in up north. Where was she?
She has a dig now from University of Central Florida up in Azerbaijan. No, somewhere in that area.
Yeah, sounds right. Yeah. I was watching that video. Was a very different experience out there in Syria. Like the idea of having a covering, having shade.
Oh yes.
Excavate in, or it's not what I had.
It's a recent advancement in Israel.
An amazing advancement, I must say.
It's amazing. We can uncover whole civilizations, but keeping the sun off is somehow too much.
I remember standing, being so excited in my square out at the wall. There's a rampart out there, and when I got down far enough that the bulk would provide some shade just after noon, it was great.
We don't excavate past noon anymore. Yeah. But before they would excavate at, like, my professor, he was excavating at Ekron, Tel Mikne Ekron, and they would excavate like in the evening.
Wow!
And when they found the Philistine inscription, it was like later in the evening, so they had to wait to film it in a perfect lighting. Yeah.
Those are fun times. All right, I will get to the questions now. Sorry. So,
no worries.
Chip asks, which biblical cities have you worked on or visited, and which ones are still on your bucket list? So I know you talked a little bit about that, but
biblical cities that are I've excavated at Tel Gezer and Tel Burna. I visited basically almost every single one of them in Israel. Biblical. So when you say biblical, it's a big, wide perspectives of cities, because you have all the way Spain, you have Damascus, you have bigger cities, but definitely Ur of Chaldeans, where the Abraham was born, that would definitely be something that I would love to visit. And I haven't been to Damascus either, which is something that I would like to visit. So those two definitely.
Damascus was nice, and Aleppo. We got to go to Aleppo every weekend.
That's
I was
very
over
good.
there, but went to Damascus when we got there, and then when we left. So that was fun.
Definitely Damascus, because I've never been to Syria, unfortunately.
Okay, 123 Goober P asks, "Hi Bruno, what time range are you most focused on, and do you see changes in religious practice over time?"
Absolutely. So my focus is on Iron Age 1 and Iron Age 2, particularly Iron Age 2. So what I'm doing, I'm comparing the religions of the Judah, which is south, and then Israel north. I'm comparing how they work together. Was there any overlap, or was it the same religion? So, because there was a divided kingdom after King Solomon. So I'm just looking at that. But yes, there is definitely a big change. So from late Bronze Age, we had big temples. Then we have the late Bronze Age collapse, 1177, and then we have small outside of the city altars, or small buildings that are outside of the city mostly, or just like small religious structures in the city, but next to the walls. No temples. Mm-hmm. But I'm talking about the Israelites and the Judahites. But the Philistines still had temples, and then in the Iron Age 2 are progressing, but definitely Iron Age 1 there was a kind of a collapse of all religion as well. So it was just like smaller.
In the Iron Age 2, have the sanctuaries moved inside the city limits, or are they still external?
They move inside city limits, and we have more inscriptions.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Chip asks, "Can you describe your favorite excavated find from Tel Burna?"
From Tel Burna, no, because I was there. We just started excavating the G area, so it was just gate. We just found the surface, but at Tel Gezer, I found a foot of a lion.
Oh,
it was it was like it's a ceramic piece. It's about I don't know, like a fist big, and it was like a foot of a lion. So that was my favorite one that I found.
That's very cool.
I know that when I was out at Mara and I went out, I assumed that I was going to come down on a huge cache of tablets. I mean, that's obviously because I'm excavating.
Everyone does that.
Okay, everybody finds a big cache of tablets. By the end, after the 700,000th pottery sherd, one of the Syrian workers came running over in Arabic and was saying, "Look, look, look!" And I looked at it, and it was this little like figurine, maybe the size of a credit card, of a bull, and it was. I was so excited. Now I'm out on the edge of the tell, and so I'm yelling to the dig director to come out, who's at the center of the tell, and he got out there. It was Glenn Schwartz, and he came out. I said, "Look, look, look what we found!" And he said, "Oh boy, well, pack it up. We found what we were looking for." Thanks.
That's funny.
He has the best sense of humor.
All right, last question. And I'll go back and see if anybody's put any more in. What are your plans in relation to creating more videos using the video and drone footage you have captured from archaeological sites?
Well, once I'm done with my PhD, which should be hopefully this summer, I'm planning to do smaller videos, like maybe a few minutes long, just with some of the footage that I do have, just like on Instagram or something like that. But I'm also thinking I need to talk to Dr. Eric Klein, who gave my voice. He wrote a book about biblical archaeology and all the myths from the Bible, like finding Noah's Ark or finding the garden. And so kind of make some videos with his book, and also interviewing I have several projects that I have in mind, but also interviewing the archaeologists that are still living, like Bill Deaver, Israel Finkelstein, Mari Yamazaki, and kind of Guy Barkai, and kind of talked about their most significant finds and what the relations are and things like that, how they feel about each other.
You're a brave man.
Well, if they don't know the final edit, so hopefully we'll be able to do something like that.
Nice. We actually did have 2 more questions come in, and Megan, do we?
Yep.
Time for? Good. Okay, so 1, 2, 3. Goober P asks, I have heard archaeologists sometimes rebury and purposely choose not to disturb some parts of a dig to allow for better methods later. Have you done that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We would just basically not rebury, we would just put dirt back. Well, it's not rebury because then you would take it out of the context. What we do is we excavate what we can and then put some isolation on and just put dirt over it because that's the best protection. So definitely, yeah, that's definitely what we do.
Excellent. And last one from the Higher Evolutionary. Bruno, do you find that scholars in your field have more freedom to understand or interpret their findings? It seems different from textual analysis, which could smuggle in doctrine.
So this is yeah. Go ahead.
Do you ever come under maybe pressure to conform to specific religious interpretations, as opposed to like scholars of the Hebrew Bible who maybe have to maybe come with biases or are required by the institutions to adhere to certain religious beliefs themselves?
Well, the school that I'm at kind of has that notion, and that's why I would not say my decision is, it's not really controversial because it's kind of aligns with the mainstream archaeology, but definitely doesn't align with the Christian belief per se. So, but I'm a free scholar, so I'm not going to, I'm going to go into the data. That's what I do. The data speaks for itself. But to answer the question, how would I say this? So the religion, so especially when you interpret the religion, if you're not certain, archaeology kind of default, it's a cult.
It's ritual, it's cult, yep.
Religion, yeah. It's ritual. This is ritual, it's gotta be ritual.
If you're not sure what it is, it's ritual, but we definitely have a more lenient, a more free you have more interpretation and people are more open to it. So like, I don't know, people are familiar with log chronology that Israel Finkenstein kind of went with. Basically, he's just putting the date lower, like 100 years lower, and everyone's kind of against it and stuff like that. But I'm like, well, what if he's right? Like, it's good. It's a good scholarship. Like for him putting something like that out means that we have other scholars have to work harder to disprove him, and then therefore we have better scholarship. But if we just kind of went with the same line of channel, just say, okay, Christian way of thought is the best way, therefore you don't have any progress.
Awesome, thank you.
And I think just to sort of finish up on that, because one of the things that we wrestle with, Bruno, here on the channel is, a lot of people coming in and saying, well, you hate the Bible, for example, or, you're, they don't realize Megan's a Christian, but, but you hate the Bible, and academia is all, like a united front. Everybody's just repeating what everybody says. And so scholars, they have this anti-supernatural bias, all these things, we have to wrestle against all the time. So just from somebody else who's in the field, do you have, is your work driven by, these anti-God, anti-Bible, anti-supernatural? Are you reinterpreting the data because you hate God? Sorry, that's a very
no.
Not to put you on the spot or anything.
No, you interpret the data as it is, and for me, like when I was first looking doing my initial research, I would be finding all these things that were like, oh my God, this doesn't match the Bible, But now when I'm kind of putting it all together, the Bible wasn't that far off what we have in the field as well. So. No, I do not hate God, and I don't think I'm against Christians or any other religion for that matter, and I don't think any scholar is in that way. But study of religion, we as archaeologists, we know how it started. So for us, it's more about data-driven than if you're, trying to confirm a theology.
Well, thank you very much. This was very interesting, and I'm coming to ASOR. Well, we're both coming to ASOR next year, so we will definitely see you there and watch your videos, because that's really fantastic. Do you have any last words before we say goodbye?
I really appreciate this fund, and hope the best person wins in a way. I mean, it's not really competition, but it is.
It's kind of weird like that. Well, thank you so much. And we will definitely be in touch in a couple of weeks.
Thank you very much. Have a good day, guys.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Bruno. Bye. There we go. Well, that was... Put that poor boy on the spot, Josh.
Sorry, it was meant to be funny. Clearly, didn't come across that way.
No, I'm
just going to sit here in the corner quietly.
But I think that is a point that is worth reiterating. The whole purpose of scholarship is to drive interpretations forward and drive our knowledge forward, rather than simply find things that conform to what we already know.
How much do you love Jesus? That's what I was going to ask now.
I don't think we can ask those questions.
I'm just kidding.
So thank you, Bruno. That was very, very interesting. I enjoyed that. And like I said, the link to Bruno's full video will be in the description by the end of today. So if you would like to see a kind of sped up version of what a day on a dig looks like, highly recommended, because it's a singular experience. There is... And again, I didn't actually excavate. I've done a lot of site survey, but just being in the field and doing archaeological work there's nothing quite like it.
We have a $25 donation that came in.
We have a $25 donation. Josh,
Sorry.
would you like to tell us? Do we know who it's from?
We do, but I don't know that.
Okay, we're not going to say their name because it's a PayPal thing, so we have real names, and we don't, unless explicitly given permission, we do not use.
I call him Dwight.
From Dwight. Well, Dwight, thank you very much for your donation. If you would like to donate to HAPS, we have links going across the bottom of the screen. We have PayPal. We also take recurring donations via Patreon, which is www.patreon.com/HAPSfund. That's HAPSFUND. And in the near future, all donations to HAPS will be tax deductible, which I'm very excited about, because I am hoping it will mean that more people will be enticed to donate. I am in the process of waiting for feedback. I have filled out all of the forms for the IRS. So that's going to be very exciting. We will be an official nonprofit, which is not something I ever imagined I would be doing, but I'm very, very glad that I am. We had, I think, a question right at the beginning. If there's a tie for the votes, will you hold a live cage fight for the applicants? Probably not. Probably not. Oh. I know that was probably not a serious question. I don't think cage fight is really the direction we want to take this in. If there is a tie, I don't know what we'll do. We will have to address that when it happens. Maybe do another revote. A lightning round, maybe. Or maybe some very generous person donates $500 and suddenly we have enough to fund all 4 students. I mean, I'm not saying it's beyond the realm of possibility, because that would be amazing. We are actually, as things stand, financially by August, when we have to finish giving out funds, we will be just under the $8,000 mark for this year, which is very exciting. It means we can very safely offer three scholarships of $2,000 each. But if we do get a very generous donation between now and probably the end of the month, we may even be able to fund 4. But I'm making no promises on that front, because it's a lot of money, and we're just honestly excited that we get to do 3, because we thought when we first started this, we thought maybe we'll be able to give 1 person some money, and then we could give 3 people money, and it was amazing. Yeah, I really like doing this.
And now we're only 50 subs away from 14,000.
And now we're only 15 subs away from 14,000 subs.
50, 50.
50. What did I say?
I don't know. But it was awesome.
So we are about ready for our next person. So I am going to bring in Mari. Hopefully everything will work the way that it should do. Sorry, we have to wait for a second for everything to load in with Zoom.
Would you like some tea?
I would not like some tea, thank you. Okay. Mari, hello, there you are.
Hi.
Wonderful. Oh, we can see you and we can hear you. This is a glorious day. How are you?
Exciting. Yeah. I was really concerned it wouldn't work.
Well, last week we had someone's mic just didn't work and I was like, I don't know what to do. I'm so sorry. It worked eventually. It just needed unplugging and replugging, but technical
I'm
problems.
very thankful for my husband's PC because mine wasn't working at all today.
Oh, no. Oh, well, I'm glad you're here. I'm glad we can hear you. It's nice to meet you. So we'll dive right in. Could you tell us how you got into the field?
Yeah, so actually the way I got into archaeology is a kind of a tortuous way.
Those are the best ways.
Yeah, so like many of us, when I was a child, I was fascinated with all this antique, ancient stuff. But as I went to university, I felt like, oh, maybe, you need to find a real job, as many call it, when it's not an academic profession. And so I did something else. Mm-hmm. And it was a nice job, I guess, but I wasn't happy with it. And actually, I have to thank my brother, because he noticed that I wasn't happy and he pushed me to ask myself the question, what do I really want to do with my life? And that's how I changed my course completely and landed into archaeology. So I started from scratch, a bit older than the other students maybe. And I got completely hooked in this wonderful field. And when I had some experience with some excavation here and there, and then eventually I participated to the University of Turin's excavation on Cyprus. And that's where I was completely blown away. And it was like, I know that the Eastern Mediterranean is where I want to do.
That's fantastic.
This is what I want to be doing. And I grew up by the sea. I always knew that there was an attraction to the sea. Mm-hmm. But when I started to put archaeology and the sea together, that's when it was like real love, I guess.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So here I am now. And even if the pay is not exactly good,
yep,
I don't regret it.
That's amazing. So what, well, let's just, stick with the questions we have, because we have several questions. So what is your own personal area of specialization?
So I would say I'm an Eastern Mediterranean archaeologist. So my research interests are about investigating the maritime cultural landscape of the Eastern Mediterranean Bronze Age, with a focus on the late Bronze Age especially, so second half of the second millennium BC, roughly. And I work on extracting concepts of maritimity. So what I'm actually interested in is how people perceive the sea and its resources and how they conceptualize them. Mm-hmm. So in a way, I would say, dealing with concepts and perception, I do use the tools of cognitive archaeology a lot. And I do know that there is a little bit of skepticism when cognitive archaeology is called into the question, especially because it sounds like, in some ways it sounds a bit exotic, and in others it's like, oh, but what do you actually look for? But actually, when you think about it, all archaeological material is in a direct or indirect product of the human mind. Mm-hmm. So what we do in this sense is to interrogate the material record to understand what sort of mental processes, what sort of worldview lie behind it. So what is in the background of what people actually made. So how do I use these methods, these principles to extract, to find my concepts of maritimity? Well, I simply look at all the many ways in which humans interacted with their sea. Where did they settle? Did they eat fish or shellfish? Were they apt seafarers? Did they prefer to keep their feet on solid ground instead? Did they build temple to gods by the sea, or were they, I don't know, were they worshipping maritime gods in a way that we understand it as like a sea god nowadays? So going to more detail, it's an aspect that is very dear to me when I'm looking into how people thought about the sea and its resources, is looking at foodways, or more simply put, like the ways we interpret food, or even more basically, we are what we eat. So I follow the principle that we understand the world and we conceptualize the world that is around us also through the way we eat it, and this interaction with the resources. So in the case of marine food stuff, how did these people in ancient times consume them? How much did they consume, if at all, if it was even thought of an edible foodstuff? Is it something special? Is it an everyday thing? Is it something worthy of the gods or not? Worthy of the dead or not? And to do this, I look very much into the faunal remains, so fish bones and shell remains, which give a lot of information on how they were caught and how they were, like how people actually managed to procure them. But I also look at the texts that refer to these kind of resources. So, for instance, simply the way that people commercialized fish and foodstuff, like and marine foodstuff, or the way they used these marine resources to produce something else. And the famous case is the production of purple dye, which was a main item of export for the Levant for starting from the Bronze Age on. But this is not all. Like, I don't only the food is a big part, but I don't just look at the food, but also at let's say on a second level, at how these the sea and the resources were integrated into symbolic behavior. So did they, for example, put these shells or something maritime into a grave? Or in the case of Byblos, or would they put votive anchors inside a temple? Like, this is a very, very specific way of dealing with the sea, and to put some symbolism to it, attach some values that are just beyond their practical uses. So I look at these aspects of material culture that all relate somehow to a life by the sea, and to the ways that these people actually lived the sea. Because living along the coast doesn't mean that you live with the sea in any way. So it can be also a relationship of exclusion, of mutual exclusion, and this is not so unusual as we might think. And finally, I put all of these different types of information together from a geographic perspective. So I look at the spatial distribution of all these materials, these faunal remains, these, let's say, mapping down these behaviors. And of course, these are a lot of different things. There are a lot of different questions that rise when looking at a large picture and a large topic such as this. And as it often happens in archaeology, it's like putting together a puzzle with a lot of missing pieces.
Yeah.
But having the more we add to this puzzle, the better we gain a picture of it. And actually, by putting together foodways, space, symbolic behavior, and material culture and text, there is a way of having all these little pieces to giving us an idea of how people perceive the sea and how they conceptualize it. And I'm at the final stages my research project, and I'm starting to actually get this picture of how all these people actually lived and engaged with this world that is the sea, and it's an exciting moment.
It sounds incredibly exciting because you're right. That is an immense amount of data and just so varied. So to be able to be in the position where you can sit down and actually start to make sense of it must be fantastic.
Yes, and it's also very difficult.
Yes, I imagine.
I will be honest, it's not a simple task. And there's a lot of frustration as well.
Yes. So I know you're probably not quite ready to talk about conclusions, but do you see a lot of geographical variation in the data that you've got?
Actually, it's like with caution because I haven't finished analyzing all the data. I would say my area of interest is like more specifically the southern Anatolian coast, the Levantine coast, and Cyprus. And there is some variation as far as I can see right now. So there are different behaviors, but like these differences, I would say, are rather superficial. So there seems to be some underlying concept of the sea as a resource that seems to be shared by all these coastal populations. What is interesting is when you go even just a few kilometers inland in some areas, in some regions, and especially I'm thinking of Cyprus, this changes a lot. So it's easier to find similarities between coastal populations from one side of the sea to the other than sometimes just going 10 kilometers inland.
That's fascinating.
So I didn't really expect this at first. And I find that this was actually interesting to realize, to grasp. And when you look at this kind of indication, because I can't be completely sure right now, I'm taking things with a bit of caution. There is this form, like with bigger islands, that there is this detachment between the coastal world and the inland of the island that is much more visible than when we are on the mainland itself.
Really? So you see more of a disparity between the coastal population and the inland population of Cyprus than you maybe do on the Levantine coast?
Exactly.
Wow.
And this is true also for later periods, and even for basically modern large islands. When you look at the ethnographic data, the attitude of the inlanders of the islands, it's often more comparable to that of someone who lives very, very far away from the sea than to the relatively comparable people living on the mainland coast. So there's, and this you see also, like if you think of the other large islands of the Mediterranean, Sicily and Sardinia, this is true already from, if you look at the 19th century AD, so like yesterday from an archaeological perspective.
That's fascinating. So just keeping an eye on the time there. If you do get the HAPS grant, what are your summer plans?
Well, I would definitely continue working on making sense of my data, and as I was saying, like this is my final stage. So I do believe that if I could like finalize my analysis of the database, that I could really get to put this partial picture together. So my work for the summer would definitely be finalizing this research project by the continuing the analysis on the database.
Very exciting to be so close to the end. Oh, congratulations!
Let's not rush.
Sorry, let's not jinx it. But that's really wonderful. Oh, and just I love it. Sorry, I love hearing about everyone's research and where they are and what they're doing. So I'm going to bring Josh in to see if he has any questions for you. I know we had a couple beforehand.
I do. Okay. How are you, Mari?
Hi.
Okay. So Chip asks, which ancient texts are most relevant to offering a comprehensive view to the Mediterranean people's view of the sea?
This is an amazing question, and it was one of my early problems. So depending on what we are looking at. So when I look at the exploitation of the Mediterranean Sea, I tend to look at the epistolary corpus, so the exchange of letters that deal with trade and gift exchange. And the biggest source for this are the Amarna letters. So in this case, you have letters that range from royal gift exchange. So believe it or not, these kings were exchanging fish as well.
Really?
Among the prestigious gifts. So there is a lipatu 𝀭 mesh that we don't really know what it is, but apparently was so prestigious that the pharaoh himself wrote about it while writing to the king of Ugarit. So it was something that helps in positioning this resource in a ranking of value.
Mm-hmm.
But we also have more basic trade letters that deal with quantities of what sort of which fish, how much of what was traded, what was commercialized. So to look at the exploitation level, I look at this kind of documents. But as I said, there's not just the functional exploitation, there is also the symbolic use and the symbolic understanding of this resource. And here we have very few texts that revolve around the ritual texts that have something to do with fish offerings, and fish being served in some special circumstances during festivals. Admittedly, this is not much. And some ritual of purification, which seem to be a bit in contrast with the fact that fish could be offered to the gods, because in this particular ritual, we have fish being grouped together with impure stuff, that some of which we don't even know what it is. So I look at these kind of texts. Another source for looking at fish, but very, very little, is the mythological texts. So fish occasionally appears also in mythological texts. And this is also important to see if the fish was really fish or marine stuff was part of the, let's say, supernatural world in the way this was, in the way these people conceptualized it. So where do we find fish? How do we find it? And for the most part, it's like a exploitation, trade, and just simple use and consumption.
So you might not have the answer to this because I know you focus on coastal regions. Do you know if there's a distinction made between fish from the ocean and fish from rivers?
Fish from the sea seems to be the normal thing. So because we're in, it's the coastal region, but it's interesting that you asked, because one of the commercialized fish, one of the traded and exported fish, is actually a fish from the Nile. So we have this Nile perch. The scientific name is Latus niloticus. And this fish is actually traded a lot, a lot more than one would expect. And it's actually not even by our standards, especially good fish to eat. So it's interesting, and it's a question that doesn't have an answer, and on which archaeozoologists have been beating their heads a lot. Why is there so much of this fish on the Mediterranean coast? Why were they importing this? Was this special in some ways? Was this super cheap, so cheap that it justified long distance
of transport?
Travel? It's a difficult question, but it seems like in general, sea fish is the normal, fish that they consumed, also because it was easily accessible. But river fish seems to occupy a niche, a relevant niche at least.
Okay, thank you.
So Miss Jessa asks, is there something eaten back then that many cultures would find weird today and vice versa?
If we talk about seafood, I wouldn't be so sure that there is something specifically that we would find weird. I don't know. Would you find shark weird?
No, because I know that some cultures in
especially in East Asia, shark is really common. Maybe nowadays in the Mediterranean is a bit of a particular thing, but it's still rather common to eat. I think this big Nile perch would be something that today we would not really go for, because it's considered, especially the big specimen which were traded in the Bronze Age, they would not be something that is interesting for us today. I mean, they still eat Nile perch, especially in Egypt, but they eat the small ones, not this large, chewy, dry meat. But actually, the interesting thing is that today we keep eating fish products that are exactly or almost the same, like fish roe. For example, in Italy, we have this bottarga, which is dried fish roe, and this is common also in Greece, Turkey, and in the Levant. And you have the same item, these dried fish cakes that are already traded in the Bronze Age.
Oh, wow.
And it's actually quite incredible, the continuity that we have with some maritime traditions, and also in the food.
Is there anything that they would think was really weird or unpleasant, in terms of fish?
I wouldn't think so, but I also don't have enough information to say this. So the corpus of evidence is not
as large as we would like, maybe.
So we wouldn't know what they are excluding from their diet. But they seem to be eating pretty much the same that we eat today.
Okay, thank you.
So Chip asks, can you describe some of the household ornaments found that were created from shells?
Household ornaments. Well, they did use larger conch shells, triton shells, as vessels at times, so to measure or to pour items, or they were also holding them. Some people think that they were making trumpets out of them. It's not very clear. But as household ornaments is difficult to say, because we do find shells in houses, maybe on the floors, but it's not clear what they were there for. So one would think that if they were not edible, and especially if they were especially beautiful or particular, they were probably just collected dead on the beach and used as ornaments. You do have some interesting things going on in temples with shells that are not edible and that are somehow all collected together for some purpose. But as Bruno was saying earlier, we go and say oh yeah, this is ritual.
Yeah.
I'd rather think that there was some purpose to it that we don't really know. Might even be just ornamental, because most of these shells are just pretty. Just let's admit it. I mean, we find it pretty. They probably found that pretty as well.
Thank you.
123 Goober P asks, do you find ancient peoples thought of the sea and its resources as their property, or did they see themselves as belonging to the sea or region?
This is an interesting question, and unfortunately, I don't have enough data to answer this properly. I would say that there was not really a concept of property related to the sea. So the sea was, I would say, the way through something, was more of a highway or a means of communication and a place where they would get resources. And in many of these cultures, you would say that the sea was somehow a divine presence, if not outright a god. So it's difficult to think or to believe that they thought of the sea as a property. So the concept of territorial waters that we have today, I'm pretty sure did not exist. But I put a question mark to that because I don't have enough information to make absolutely sure. If they thought of themselves as belonging to the sea, I would also tend to say no. The sea was this in-between space. It was something where they went through, where they went around, where they lived around, but it wasn't something that they could entirely belong to. So you have often the presence of sea monsters, sea dangers, the sea as something useful and generous, but at the same time volatile and dangerous. Mm-hmm. So I would say that even those most accustomed to the sea had this dual relationship with it that didn't really go into property or belonging, but more of a balance between exploitation and just being respectful of it.
Okay.
So we have lots of questions.
We do. We have another 5 minutes.
Okay. So Donna Noble asks, so cognitive archaeology is a way to reconstruct world knowledge of ancient people, or more like daily life reconstruction?
I would not say that it was a way of reconstructing world knowledge. It's a way of trying to understand how people understood their world. So we can't say for sure what their world knowledge was. We can see through what material remains they left us, how they probably thought about the world. But it's not an actual reconstruction. I would be very cautious with using the word reconstruction because you can't resurrect them. You can't ask them directly, what do you think about the world? And sometimes even today, when you ask someone, what do you think about the world? They wouldn't be able to give you an answer. Mm-hmm. So I would say what we can do through the methods of cognitive archaeology is to interrogate ourselves as to how these people thought about things and how these ideas reflect on the material culture. I think this is more what the cognitive archaeology is about, rather than trying to read minds.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Chip asks, what tools and evidence have been uncovered concerning the process used by Bronze Age people to drill holes in shells?
Well, actually, the tools we don't have, but it's pretty easy to drill holes in shells. I've done it myself with other shell parts, and by just making a hand drill, it's not so difficult. And I think there are also on YouTube some videos that show how you can have like these hand drills with very basic materials. Unfortunately, we don't have any tools of the sort because they would have been made with very flimsy materials that did not survive in the archaeological record or would not have been recognized.
Mm. Thank you.
Donna Noble asks, isn't it logical to assume that people in similar environments tend to use similar resources?
It is a logical assumption, but this holds a very high risk of going into what we call environmental determinism. So it is true that the environment plays a major role in how we interact with it and how we think about it. But it's also true that similar environment may originate completely different reactions. So it is a worthwhile effort to go and see, like, are they really doing the same thing or not? Mm-hmm. Because there is so many factors when it comes to the human way of understanding the world that go beyond what is immediately available. And this you have in some instances with food taboos that from a rational point of view would make no sense. So like the resource is sometimes there, it's accessible, it's available to everyone, but it's completely ignored by some people, and not by others, for instance. So we have to be a bit cautious with giving the environment or the environmental conditions too much weight. So as Donna Noble asked, yes, it is a logical thing to think that the environment is playing a major role, but with a lot of ifs, of caution, and not just by giving it too much of a weight. So it makes sense to look at all the details and all the actual evidence before formulating any conclusion.
Thank you.
I think we're probably.
Oh, we are. Oh, that's a shame. We have a couple more questions, but we will have to save them and have you back on another time to answer everyone's questions about the sea. Thank you so much for joining us, Mari. This was absolutely fascinating. Is there anything you want to add before we say goodbye? Just that you're doing an amazing thing to have this crowdfunded scholarship. It's really an amazing job you're doing. Thank you. It's fun. Thanks for the opportunity. Of course. Thank you for applying and just for coming and being willing to talk to us for half an hour about the sea. This was wonderful. And we'll be in touch in a couple of weeks. Thank you, Mari. Bye. Bye. Okay. Everybody, this is going. This is going wonderfully. I think I said exactly the same thing last time, but we have some really interesting research being proposed here. Well, not even being proposed, just interesting research being carried out. So thank you all for keeping the questions coming in. I'm really sorry. I do want to be respectful of our applicants' time, so I don't want to overrun. I also want to be fair, so I don't want to give, say, Mari more time than Bruno had. Because that does have an impact on whether or not they receive the grant. But thank you for your questions. They are absolutely wonderful. And in many cases, questions that I would never think to ask myself. So, excuse me, sorry, very exciting times. If you've joined us since we started, hello, it's nice to have you. Today we are interviewing applicants for our summer scholarship program, HAPS. If you would like to learn more, then you can rewind to the beginning of the stream. I did a little spiel about what HAPS is and why we do it and why it's important. If you do have any spare money, and I am saying this because it's important to recognize that this is a very difficult time for the majority of the world and people are being left without work. So if you have spare money and you would like to help, we would be very grateful. We have PayPal, which is digitalhammurabi@gmail.com. We also take monthly donations via Patreon, which is patreon.com/HAPS fund. The link should be scrolling across the bottom of your screen as we are talking. And if you are interested in what we're doing and cannot or do not wish to donate, that's absolutely fine. Watch the videos, interact with our interviewees, send us your questions, and share these videos with people that you think may be interested, because one of the things that we are trying desperately to do is put interested non-specialists in touch with PhD students who are doing really fascinating research. And this is research that deserves to be publicized, that people should be hearing about. So really, that's what we're trying to do. We're just trying to spread some good research and good information in the best way that we can. So thank you all for joining us. We have one more interviewee today, and then we will be back next Saturday starting at 12 p.m. EST with, I think, another 3 applicants, and then we'll just keep going until we run out of people to talk to. So let me just get our next and final person in here. Sorry, it takes a minute, everybody, for Zoom to kick in and work out what it's supposed to be doing. I feel like I should have some kind of waiting music while we do this. Oh, Josh is going to sing for us.
Hello?
Hello. We can we can hear you. We cannot see you.
Okay, I don't know why. Wait. Yeah.
There.
Yeah.
Well, we
have...
sorry.
Wait. I have this. Yeah.
Oh, we have one of those as well. I occasionally forget to take it off when I start recording video, and I get halfway through and realize it's just narration.
I always forget it.
Well, it is lovely to meet you. We can hear you. We can see you. All things are go.
It's a bit dark here, so wait. Yeah, that's okay.
No, it's a little bit on the late side for people joining us from Europe. So this is Francesc. Am I saying that right?
Yeah.
Wonderful.
More or less, but yeah. French Xavier.
Okay. Thank you for being forgiving of my pronunciation. Welcome. It is lovely to see you. Thank you for joining us. I know it's a little late for you. Could you start by maybe just giving us a brief explanation of how you got into the field?
Yeah, that's easy. That's just because I love archaeology and I love the ancient Near East. So
an excellent answer. It was just a natural progression.
That's simple. Yeah, that's simple. So,
so what is your personal area of specialization?
I'm specialized in field archaeology.
Mm-hmm.
I'm archaeology as my job, so it's field archaeology basically. Mm-hmm. But I studied Egyptology. I know it is not the usual to to find something that studied Egyptology and then dedicates to the ancient Near East, but I did.
It's a good crossover. You're right. It's not common, but I think it's a fantastic thing to do. So what is there anything in particular that you are researching, or is it just general archaeological practices?
No, I'm researching something in particular. It is I'm my PhD is about an ancient culture. Is an ancient society that's called Nineveh 5. Is a bit specific because it's a society that's only present in North Mesopotamia. So I'm in a research team that we are working in Iraqi Kurdistan. Mm-hmm. You know the area.
I've not been, unfortunately, but my archaeology professor actually opened a dig there a few years ago.
Yeah, it's normal because this area was forsaken for a long time. Not so many projects there for a long time because everybody wanted to go to the South Mesopotamia because bigger cities and Bible. Mm-hmm. But a few decades ago, everybody started to go there, basically because as the other regions start to being dangerous, the only safer one in that area was the Kurdistan. Mm-hmm. So everybody started to go there.
Yeah,
and we are there now. I'm in a team that has 4 different projects. Actually in the same month, so we will be excavating luckily at 4 different sites.
Oh wow!
In one month, yeah, because of the virus. So we planned to undertake the 4 excavations in 2 different seasons, but the first one had to start it in April. Mm-hmm. Yeah, in April, but because of the virus, obviously.
That's not happening.
We couldn't start, so it was a huge problem, but nothing to be solved. And the society I am studying, it is present in one of these sites that is called 🀭Lashkir. Mm-hmm. No idea about it. we have 2 or 3 publications on it, but nothing special. Mm-hmm. I plan to start working there this summer, so it will be my first time there in Iraqi Kurdistan. I have already been in Egypt, but as work, just as work as archaeology. I got paid for this.
Yeah.
So I hope to start my investigation there on the field.
because my work is divided into steps. I call steps. The first one was the laboratory work. In that it seems simple, but it's not. it was really hard. In fact, I spent 2 years doing this, the laboratory work.
Mm-hmm.
That was just collecting all information available about the society. That's not too much, because there is not a lot of work done about it. And I spent 2 years just collecting information about archaeological sites all around the area.
Mm-hmm.
That's not only Iraqi Kurdistan, but this is the only safer place that we can work now, because the society is spread along northeast Syria and southeast Turkey.
Mm-hmm.
But these places are not exactly secure now.
Yeah.
Syria is not secure at all. We will focus on Iraqi Kurdistan, and this is good because it's the less explored area in the whole North Mesopotamia.
Mm-hmm.
Because of this particular area was particularly unsafe and unstable because of huge conflicts, civil wars. Yeah, until 2 decades ago.
Mm-hmm.
So and that's right now that we want to do. We will do that between August and September.
Okay.
Because of the virus.
Mm-hmm.
So
get in and do it.
Yeah. I hope so.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
So what can you tell us a little about this culture that you're studying? What chronological period is it, and how do you recognize it?
Yeah, of course. This culture. Yeah, all my group is studying prehistory, basically prehistory.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not my chronological period. My period is early Bronze Age.
Mm-hmm.
Well, actually, the beginning of the early Bronze Age. It's about 3000 and 2700 BC, more or less, because as I said before, it's not really well known and chronologic, and
it's something that's still being worked on.
It's not. The main feature to recognize this society, for what we know, is that they recovered the painted pottery. So we got a previous period, that's called Uruk period. That's a culture that spread until the South Mesopotamia to North Mesopotamia, everywhere, and it's easily recognizable because its pottery was not decorated, and you can see the pottery. You can say that's ugly. That's ugly. That's ugly pottery. Bowls with no decoration, and then when this civilization falls and start Nineveh, the Nineveh 5, North Mesopotamia, they come again to paint their pottery, really nice decorations, figuratives, vegetal motifs, animal. And this is the main feature because I couldn't say nothing about architecture, about funerary furniture, because we don't know almost anything. So there is a lot of things to discover about them.
That's exciting though, because it means that there's a lot for you to add and to contribute if you
a lot of
as
work.
Long as yes, a lot of work.
A lot of work.
As long as you're able to get out and to excavate. So can I ask a little bit? What did you do in Egypt?
Yeah, in Egypt. As I said before, I studied Egyptology. So the director of the postgraduate know that I was archaeology, and he said to me, "Oh, if you want to work with us in Egypt, we need to archaeology, and I need money. So
why not?
Yeah, it basically it's basically a job for me. Obviously, I like it. I enjoy to go there and participate in the project. The project is in Saqqara. You know Saqqara?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But our viewers probably won't. So.
Yeah, but it's not Saqqara. It's not exactly Saqqara. It's deep in the desert, like 6 kilometers inside the desert of Saqqara. There is a site called Kom El Hamasin. It's not absolutely no, because we are the first one that we are working there, and there are tombs of the sixth dynasty or the first intermediate period, more or less. But we had to start the digging works this year, but for the virus we couldn't, and that's a huge problem for me, because it was the only source of funding for me. Yeah, it was a job, but it was the only. Yeah. And with the virus, we had to cancel it, and it's a huge problem.
Because, so if and I'm asking all of our archaeologists planning fieldwork this question, if you can't go and excavate in Kurdistan, what are your plans instead?
Yeah. In fact, this is, as I said, this is my second plan. So the virus, the virus already, the virus already canceled me the first plan. So I am in the second one, and if I couldn't do it, I probably will be here, just analyzing the materials of the last campaign, because last campaign I couldn't participate on the excavation of Gird Lashkir, but we have all the materials. We have drawings of the materials, we have drawings of the structures, we have drawings of everything. I suppose I would study this to go there.
hopefully by August, everything will be a little more calm. So you mentioned that you're part of a team working on four different projects. What are the other projects? Are you just going to just 4 different sites and or are there specific research goals?
The other projects, one of the other projects is already worked by us. Is a prehistoric mound. It's called Gird Banahilk. It's basically prehistoric, Halaf and Nubite, I think. Yeah, Halaf and Nubite. The other is a cave. I don't know too much about it. It's in the region of Soran, Kurdistan, but I think it's also prehistoric, but also Bronze Age. But I don't know. But it was worked by a French expedition last year, and we are going to join in, because they are leaving to South Kurdistan, to South Iraq, they said, and we are taking that excavation.
You're going to take over. Good luck.
A lot of work.
Yes. I was going to say it's difficult enough just being in one dig for 2 months, but going to 4
in 1 month.
Yeah, I was going to say going to 4 with 1 month is something else entirely.
Yeah, it's 1 month for this virus. So.
Well, I'm going to bring Josh in now and see if we have any questions. I know we had a couple before we started. Okay. So Josh, go for it.
Thank you. Yes, we have 3. Everybody in the everybody in the side chat, if you have questions, please tag at Digital Hammurabi and we'll get them asked. Excuse me. Just wanted to let you know, Megan, that we have a $10 and a $50 donation.
Gracious, thank you, everybody. We appreciate your generosity. If you would like to make a donation, we have the donation information scrolling across the screen. That will all go straight to the scholarship fund. So thank you very much.
All right. First question is from Chip. Which tools or programming languages do you use to process GIS data, and what novel insights has that produced? You can just ask.
Okay. For all data, I started using just Google Maps and or other simple base maps. now I'm starting to use another database like Access. Now I'm using Access for make it easier.
Mm-hmm.
And then I will start using GIS for making the maps more exact and all data. And the other question, what was that?
Has I think that's maybe for later in your project, but has the use of GIS produced any particular insights?
No, this is for
absolutely
for later. Yeah, I have to wait for the field work, and then
we'll ask you when you come back. 123 Goobapi says, what aspects of early Bronze Age culture are you most focused on?
Well, as I said before, this is a largely unknown culture, so I'm focusing for now in the aspects we know about this culture. That's basically pottery. We know some things about architecture, about some terms. In the whole area that this culture spread. We only know 50 tomes, and it's not too much. It's not enough to say yeah, we know things about I don't know, about the rituals, about the funerary furniture. It is largely unknown, so I just could focus on pottery. That we know. Yeah, we can say that painted pottery is probably earlier than incised pottery, probably, and the decorations could also be a chronological mark, but we cannot say a lot about it.
Yeah.
Because mainly all the information we have about this culture, apart of from big excavations from big sites in Syria, mostly in Syria, all information came from what we call salvage operations. Is that when a government plans to build a dam, for example, in a river, archaeologists have to make plans for salvage all the sites that are going to be affected for these floodings. So in the geological sites in the nearest are especially vulnerable to this damage, because they are mud. They are mounds of mud. So the floodings can destroy the sites completely. So the information we have comes directly from this kind of excavations. So there are no scientific plan on all these excavations. They are the just to be lucky to find something that's interesting to you, because of bigger sites in Syria, and that's the problem I have. Well, it's not a problem. It's an opportunity to. So yeah, it's an opportunity to start a new research,
a new project.
Yeah.
With all of that in mind, and I suspect the answer will be we don't know. Do we have a lot of context for where the pottery would have been found or used within a particular site, or not so much?
No.
No, that's fine.
So I know sometimes it is used in tombs, but it's also used in daily life. I don't know.
No,
so
that's fine.
I remember one thing I found it that in a tomb, the archaeologists found a jar from another culture inside a Nineveh 5 jar.
Really?
Yeah, it was like, I read that. I read that and I was like, how is this? What is it?
That's interesting.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that for now
we just don't know.
We just don't know. We just don't know.
Do you
need more work.
Do you know if the tombs are within like the tell, or are they external to the rest of the settlement? Don't know. That's fine.
Don't know.
So another question from Chip. Can you describe the geographic information you collected at Saqqara?
At Saqqara?
Yes.
No, I cannot.
Awesome. Good answer.
It's not published. It's not published, so I cannot.
No, not yet.
I cannot say anything geographically,
Yeah,
but but it's difficult to. It is the region of Mosul, region of Mosul.
Mm.
It's all the east of Mosul and Kirkuk,
Mm-hmm.
northeast.
Fantastic.
Northeast of Kirkuk, but all this.
Thank you.
Yeah, all these provinces belong to the historical Kurdistan, but it's that's another thing.
We have 123 Gubapi again. How does the preservation of artifacts in the Kurdistan region compare with contemporary sites in Egypt?
Well, I cannot say anything about Kurdistan because I have not been there. So in Egypt, I don't know what I can say about Egypt.
With Egypt, are you looking at salvage excavations, or is it more often excavations that have been carried out under like scientific archaeological expeditions?
In Egypt?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, in Egypt. In Egypt, the archaeological excavations are not usual.
Yeah,
because there are no dam projects. The only big dam project in Egypt was the Aswan Dam.
Mm-hmm.
in the 70s, but they have no. Yeah, there's no more rivers to. There's no more rivers to dam.
You've got the one, and then.
Yeah, because in the Middle East there are a lot of rivers
mm-hmm.
that are on, but it's a huge one, a really big one that covered a lot of territory. Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate you being so flexible with these questions. I know they're not. A lot of them are questions that just can't be answered yet. So Richard Madsen is asking, and I suspect this is going to be another I don't know. We've partially covered some of this. Do you know if domesticated beasts were used for agricultural work, and have any unusual tools or weapons been recovered?
I know. Yeah. Yeah, probably. I remember. So not agricultural tools, but there is not so singular. Mm-hmm. There are just regular tools like I don't know, just the other tools that can use. But I remember that there was an object that was really common. Well, really common. Common in the Nineveh 5 sites. Mm-hmm. It was a kind of toy, mm-hmm. Not a toy, like a models of animals or of goats or sheep in mud. Mm-hmm. But it's the only object that I can point out. Just to see, and the useful of this object that is not clear mm-hmm. at all. So. My team, my director's team has a paper published about these objects. They ask them to be toys.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you. We are actually done with questions. Nothing else has come in. Is there anything that you'd like to add before we let you go?
No. I said it all.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. This was very interesting. I'm again sorry. I know. Questions on the fly can be a little tricky, especially at the beginning of a research project when you actually haven't done the work yet that you're planning on doing. But thank you for coming on. It's been lovely to talk to you. And we'll be in touch in a couple of weeks.
Okay.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Okay, everybody. That is, I have shrunk severely in my, sorry. I crop the windows differently, and then I just realized that actually I've shrunk in the window that's just me. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you to all of our interviewees. It's always an education for me talking to all of the people who are applying, because everyone has such different and diverse research interests that almost never coincide with anything that I've researched while a student. So this is fascinating and very enjoyable. that is us done for today. I'm going to go and have some lunch because I'm really hungry. Next week, we'll be back on again at 12 p.m. EST with 3 more interviews. Again, keep an eye on the calendar. That's digitalhammurabi.com/calendar. That will have all of our live streams listed on it. So if you want to know when we're going to be talking to people, you can check there and find out. We have 1 more week of the applications being open. So if you are watching this, if you are planning on applying to HAPS, you need to get your application in before next Friday, please. And someone will get back to you to schedule your interview. Yeah, thank you, everyone. We had some great questions. And as ever, chat was very polite, very friendly, which I appreciate greatly. And until next time, resist poor scholarship. Always ask, how do you know that?